actually went Zoom, then go to YouTube Live. So I'm live on YouTube, and then I still get to save it onto the internet.
Wow, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm. So that there, I don't know if you can see that, but we're live on YouTube, live on Facebook.
That's great.
Wow, got 5 people in already.
Nice.
That's unusual.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow.
They've been sitting out here waiting on you. Yeah.
I love it.
Right. Okay. So I just let this play for a little while to get up on here.
Did you get compose this just for the program?
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yes. This was made by a guy by the name of Ann Arbor named Anthony Larkin.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And I played one song for him. I said, I want this feel right here. And then he made this, and damn, this is what we came up with.
Wow, that's impressive, man.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And just set it on my lap. Uh-oh. All righty. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Ear to the Ground 197. I'm your host. I don't see any movement here. Let's see something right here. Okay. Can you hear me now? Everybody out there, can you hear me? There we go. Ear to the Ground 197. I'm your host. My name is Bryan Foley. And who we have in the studio today is House Representative 53rd District, Democratic Floor Leader,
Yes, sir.
Yusef Rabi. So we want to welcome on the show this morning. We're going to sit around here. We're going to talk about how can we have an Ann Arborite in the city of Ypsilanti. We're going to find that out. We've heard that he's very friendly towards Ypsilanti. We're going to find that out and everything. And I understand that you're also running for another office, if you would, was it? So anyway, we'd like to welcome everybody to Ear to the Ground 197. Those of you who are regulars to the show know that I always have some type of technical difficulty going on. First, it was the sound just a little bit, then the video, and now my theme song caught off, just went off for whatever reason before we get through, and the microphone wasn't turned on. But anyway, we want to welcome everybody. Tracy Davis, who is our sponsor, she says, welcome to Ear to the Ground 197. And we're going to get right into it because we know that this is a holiday weekend for some of our people. Some of our people celebrate Easter. Some of us celebrate Resurrection Day. Then you have some people who simply celebrate from the origin of that word Easter, Ishtar, Ashtaroth, which is a fertility goddess. But whatever you celebrate, do it responsibly, do it respectfully, and do it in safety. We know that spring's coming out. It's a nice day and everything, and we tend to get out and like to have a good time out here and what have you. You know, in my community, Easter or Resurrection Day in the church is a big day. And so all the young ladies, the night before, their mothers, they press their hair, they pull out the hot comb, you get what I'm saying? So it's not uncommon to see on Saturday morning, Sunday morning, when the ladies go to church, little girls go to church, they have these burnt ears up when you start straightening comb, burnt foreheads and stuff like that from using that Ultra Sheen, Perm, Bergamot, Dixie Peach and all that kind of stuff. I don't know if you know anything about that, but that's what they be doing. They straighten their hair, they have their Easter suits on. Matter of fact, speaking of Easter suits, if you young men and ladies are still looking for clothing to get for services tomorrow, you can go down to Easley's warehouse that's located on Hamilton and Harriet Street. He has a lot of new suits up there, new arrivals. I was just in there last night looking through it and stuff like that. So it's not too late to go ahead and get your Easter suit, like we used to say back in the day. But anyway, we have Yusef Rabi from the city of Ann Arbor, born and raised in the city of Ann Arbor, is what I understand. And this is your 3rd term as a state senator and state representative, excuse me, and your term limited out. All right. So tell us first, who is Yusef Rabi? A little bit of background. I personally, first time I think I physically met you, I've been to a lot of events and stuff like that, but we want to welcome you. But tell us, who is Yusef Rabi? We can.
Excellent. Well, first off, I want to thank you for having me on the program here. This is awesome. And so actually earlier, just a quick correction. You said born and raised in Ann Arbor. I was actually born in Ipsy.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, so
I'm sorry.
it's all good. It's all good.
Okay.
So
right.
yeah, I was actually born in Ipsy, Normal Park, on Oakwood and Sherman, right near the intersection there. That's where I was actually a home birth. So I was born at home in Ypsilanti and lived in Ypsilanti for the first several years of my life. Then my family moved to Ann Arbor, and I've lived in Ann Arbor ever since.
We won't hold that against you.
It's all good.
Okay,
it's
all
all good. At least I got my strong roots from it.
Exactly.
So.
Okay, all right. Okay.
So, but yeah, so then I went through the public schools and graduated from the University of Michigan with a degree in environmental science from the University of Michigan. And, really, I got engaged in activism from an early age, whether it was the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan and, being very vocal about my opposition to those conflicts. Environmental issues has been something that's important to me. And then labor activism. And in fact, when I was a student at U of M still, I participated in a sit-in at the president's office protesting the use of sweatshops in the production of University of Michigan apparel. Okay. And so, and a bunch of us were actually arrested as part of that. And so that was kind of my trajectory into politics, started as an activist. And then when I was 21 years old, finishing up my senior year at U of M, decided to run for county commissioner in Washtenaw County, won my first election by one vote, 2 votes after the recount, but 1 vote on election day, served for 6 years as a county commissioner, and then ran in 2016 for state representative, won, and came into office January of 2017, right as President Trump was coming into office. So our political environment was shifting completely. And, obviously took the lead on a lot of very important progressive issues, fighting for the people. And then in 2018, I was elected by my colleagues to be the Democratic floor leader, and I've served in that role now for 4 years.
Wow, that's a lot. So you groomed for this. You were built for this, if we say. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. And for those of you who say that voting doesn't matter, you just heard that Yusuf won by 1 vote, and then when the recount was done, actually won by 2. So I have a lot of friends, I have a lot of colleagues that say it doesn't make no difference about the vote they get in or what have you, stuff like that. Well, you just heard that classic example that your vote does matter.
Right.
You know what?
I wouldn't be here today without that. I mean, if that one person, and I can tell you a lot of stories of, that 1 vote that, made the difference. People come to me every day still now. I hear people that come to me, they say, hey, I voted for you back in 2010. I was that 1 vote that made the difference. And they try to
they're
claim,
right.
But they're right.
They're
That's
right.
what I tell them. I'm like, yes, you did. You were that 1 vote. You were that 1 vote. Everybody was.
Okay. I was looking at something and I wrote it down in there. You were talking about what I had read. It says your MI Care bill.
My Care, yeah.
My Care. Yeah. I've seen that around.
Yeah.
What is the MI Care bill?
Yeah, thank you for asking about that. Yeah. So My Care is a very unique piece of legislation, and it's the first of its kind in the state of Michigan. It's something that I introduced back in 2018 because I believe that we need in this state, and frankly in this country, a system where we have single payer universal health care. And so my bill, the My Care bill, creates a single payer universal healthcare system for the entire state of Michigan. Fundamentally, I believe that every Michigander deserves access to healthcare. It should not depend on how much money you make, on who your employer is. We as humans should have the right to healthcare, and we should have the right to healthcare without it bankrupting ourselves and our families. We shouldn't have to say, well, I'm not going to go get chemotherapy for my cancer because I can't afford it. That's not okay. And we are, the wealthiest nation in the history of humankind. Yes. We can afford this. It's not a question of if, it's a question of, do we have the political will to do this? And so, I have been persistent at introducing this legislation. The health insurance companies don't love me for it, but that's okay. I think it's what's right for the people. And I've heard a lot of very hard personal stories. I have my own of family members of mine where, health insurance, it makes or breaks families. It makes or breaks your income. And, if you have to, lose your home, or you can't send your kids to college because you have a large medical bill, that has generational impacts on families. And so what we're trying to do with this is we're trying to say, take that off the table. It shouldn't be, because really what it does is it pushes those that are struggling deeper into poverty And, those that are fine are going to be fine. They can pay a $20,000 medical bill and not worry about it. But the vast majority of Michiganders, the vast majority of Americans are not in that position. And we can do better as a country.
Yeah, we can. When we look at our neighbor to the north of us, Canada, right. They have, is this a fair term called socialized medicine?
Yeah.
Is that a fair term? So United States is a capitalistic form of government. And so it's kind of strange that like you say, in the richest nation in the history of mankind, at least to our knowledge, United States, that we don't have a universal or a social medicine.
Right.
And we have all this money and we see that we can't help the least amongst us.
And if you, I'm sorry, I didn't.
No, go ahead right here.
And if you look at nations across the planet, we're the only ones that don't have some form of universal coverage. And to be, like you said, the wealthiest nation and to not have that, even if you compare us to other capitalist countries, they have some form of coverage for folks. And there's different ways of doing it too. There's different ways of doing the coverage. Some countries like England, the government essentially owns the hospitals and all the doctors work for the state. In our plan, what we're proposing here, all we're saying is the health insurance aspect of it, that should be universal and should cover everybody. We're under our system, doctors and hospitals can still be independent entities. And you can still have complete provider choice. You can choose who your doctor is going to be. We're not trying to restrict or take that away at all. We're just saying when it comes to your coverage, when it comes to paying for your healthcare, it's all done in a single point of entry. And I think that's going to not only benefit those that are, the patients, it's also going to benefit the medical providers, right? Because you have these doctors in these hospitals and they're spending thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars on attorneys and staff that are just trying to fight with the insurance companies to get paid. And if we can eliminate that expense, we can actually save money. Our estimates is that we can save up to 20% on total healthcare spending in the state of Michigan if we pass this plan.
Wow, that's great. You were asking me about my theme song. How did that come out? And the name of the song is called Power to the People. Democracy. America's supposed to be a democratic republic. It's supposed to be a democracy. And I share this with my viewing audience all the time. Democracy or Democrat comes from the Greek word, two words, demo, which is people, and kratos, which is power or will of the people. So when we talk about a democracy, what we're talking about is the will of the people, right? And that is what a democracy is about. But in our country, it seems to be that we are governed and directed from the top down. And it seems like a lot of our legislators and elected officials, they get in the office and then they tell us what they believe what is best for us and not being able to have a listening ear to what the people want and what the people's needs are. And for what you're sharing with me, you kind of, from just interacting right now, is that you have a pulse on the community and you have a relationship with the grassroots, with the common Joe, if you will, in society, right? And you, like you said, because of your upbringing. So what drives you? What's your passion, if you will, that allows you to go out and advocate and speak for the common man, in particular in this healthcare issue? In my community, African American community, racially classified as Black, whatever the Democrats we talk about. For the point of identification, I'm talking about Black people. The pandemic, coronavirus, affected us, worse than what is reported in the news. And a lot of us still are recovering, and some of our health has been permanently altered by the coronavirus and what have you. And that we can't get healthcare, and then sometimes it's treated as a pre-existing condition, right? So I know I threw a lot at you, but for you to go out and advocate for the people, what drives you to stand up for the least amongst you or the least amongst us?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that question. I think the answer is probably multifaceted. There's a lot of aspects of that kind of fuel that passion inside of me. The first thing that I would say probably is if I weren't doing that, I wouldn't be able to look at myself in the mirror. If I weren't doing that, I would feel that I shouldn't be in elected office. And I will tell you that there are what you were just describing about power to the people and making sure that there is frankly, that the people do run this country.
Mhm.
It's actually in some ways even worse than what you were saying, that it is top down. Politicians that often are, pushing their agenda on their constituents. In some cases, it's even worse than that, which is there's a lot of corporations and private interests that are influencing our politicians and pushing them into voting on things or taking advocacy positions on things that are contrary to the interests of the people. And I have to tell you, in 6 years in office, I have seen a lot of that. There's a lot of that happens day in and day out in the legislature, and people's votes are influenced by that. Money in politics is a cancer on this country. And that is something that needs to be addressed. But to get to your fundamental question of, the drive, when I think about what I'm doing now, I'm going to get a little deep with you for a second.
Go ahead. That's why I live in the deep.
Yeah. You live in the deep.
I live in the deep. Right?
So for me, I think a lot about my ancestors.
Okay.
My grandparents and the people that came before me.
What's your ethnicity, nationality, if I can ask her? What
you can, and actually, I was going to go ahead. My father is Algerian from North Africa. So, and my grandparents on my dad's side were both revolutionaries. As you know, the history on our planet of colonialism and exploitation and slavery has been pervasive across the planet. And so both of my grandparents, my grandfather and my grandmother, fought in the War of Independence against French colonial rule in Algeria. And that was a struggle that shaped, the whole African continent.
Yes.
And, after Algeria won its independence, a lot of that struggle, was used, channeled into supporting independence movements across the continent. And so I think about those histories and the stories that my father tells me of himself growing up during that conflict and what he saw in terms of how people were treated by the colonial regime during the war. My grandmother was tortured. My father was there when she was tortured. And that has, again, there's a generational memory to that, right? And so to think back to what, to think about what I'm doing today in the context of Michigan, in the context of fighting for the people, I always think, hey, if my grandma and my grandpa was a guerrilla fighter, he fought in the hills, in the Algerian foothills. So if you've seen Battle of Algiers, the movie, that was the urban theater. He fought in more of the rural areas in like the hills of Algeria. And I always think back, I'm like, man, if they could go through that, this is the least I can do, right? And then on my mother's side, my grandfather was a UAW organizer. He was the president of his local. He was very involved in the labor movement, and so he was fighting for working people from that perspective in Detroit, Pontiac, and even into Washtenaw County. He was doing a lot of involvement with the United Auto Workers. And then my grandmother on my mom's side of the family, she was a peace activist. She organized rallies against the Vietnam War. In fact, one of them was one that Martin Luther King spoke at. And my mother met Martin Luther King at that rally. My grandmother, of course, organized it. And so, and she was then involved with the United Nations and doing work around peace and social justice globally. And so when I think about my work, I think about what is in my blood. I think about, I was born to fight for the people. That's what's in my blood. And I can't, for me to do anything but that is a betrayal of who I am fundamentally.
Yeah, thank you. We have a lot of common when we start talking about freedom fighting and from colonialism. My great-grandfather, my paternal great-grandfather actually moved to Ypsilanti to escape from the racist South and Ku Klux Klan. You get what I'm saying? And so when you start talking about that generational memory, it's encoded in my DNA, and that's why I do the things that I do. So I see we have a lot of common. Being from Ann Arbor, representing Ann Arbor, if you will, Ann Arbor politics, Ann Arbor culture has really come in and moved eastward into the Ypsilanti, and is really affecting our way of living
Mhm.
in the form of gentrification.
Yes.
And it is moving from west to east. And a lot of us are losing our homes. A lot of renters who are lifetime renters here, rent has been elevated, escalated to the point that people who are indigenous to you, if you will, whose
Yes.
family has a long history, are now finding themselves displaced from the gentrification
Right.
process. And it is being driven, and it's not a secret, it's not what have you. But the Ann Arbor politics, like I said, there's a down on River Street, there's a utility box, and I took a picture of it. I'll show it to you on my camera when we get out of here. And on the utility box, it says Ann Arbor East. On a utility box.
Are you serious?
Yeah, on River Street. I'll show you the picture. It's in front of the SOS building. I'll show you exactly where that. And it says on the utility.
That's near
box.
City Hall too, isn't it?
It's less than a quarter mile from City Hall.
Yeah.
It's down the street, it's around the corner from the Dairy Queen and
Right. Yeah.
right in that area, right across the street from the Lutheran Church. But it says Ann Arbor East. So when I look at this and you being involved at the state level of politics, there's a concerted effort to change the social dynamics, if you will, of Ypsilanti. We're kind of just like a laid back town, and we have our issues, obviously, as other towns have their issues. But that drive that's being fueled, and I'm going to say it straight out, by racist white persons, phony liberal Democrats, pretending and running up underneath that there are Democrats, but actually they have conservative and actually Republican policies in the way that they're doing business. When you look at in an area in Ann Arbor was predominantly racially classified as Black, which was called the Old West Side, Carytown, which is now had been gentrified, and they actually came in completely, and they changed the name from the Old West Side now to Water Hill.
Right.
And we see this wave moving from west to east. And there are some people from Ann Arbor who actually wanted to rename the south side of Ypsilanti. We have plaques around here that were driven by persons from Ann Arbor, right? And there's historical plaques. And they wanted to call it Black Ypsilanti, Black Ypsi. We never heard this term before. Whatever you call the south side of Ypsilanti, we called it south side of Ypsilanti.
Right.
That's what we call it. This is who we are. And so we're watching this same type of thing being driven. How do persons such as you and myself counter that move or be a part of that movement that the people, the least amongst us, do benefit by this so-called progress, and we're not simply being just wiped off of the map the way those were in the Old West Side and in Carytown.
Right. How
do we unite or form a bond or a union with those persons, progressive just as yourself, are in Ann Arbor, so that we can, our way of living and our way of life is not just a memory on those plaques?
Yeah. So that is a great question. That is a great question. And I think for me, the breakdown starts as we talk about gentrification. And again, it ties right into what we were just talking about earlier, because to me, gentrification and colonialism are
the same thing, right?
It's a synonymous language. Right. And again, when you think of the history of colonialism and what's happened across the planet, and the tie between colonialism, imperialism, slavery, these are all things that have been rebranded, repackaged, and are still happening today.
Yes.
And so what we're talking about here is that modern version of that. And so when we're talking about that in our communities, this is, and as you said, absolutely correctly, this is a trend that was happening in Ann Arbor, that has been happening in Ann Arbor, and that gentrification, that colonialism has nearly been complete at this point. And now it is moving east. So some of the things that I talk about in the context of this, the first and foremost is, the affordable housing crisis in Ypsilanti is tied to the affordable housing crisis in Ann Arbor. And when we look at making sure that, that rent, when we look at rent going up in Ypsilanti, we have to think about rent going up in Ann Arbor too, and creating those opportunities for folks who want to live in Ann Arbor or want to live in Ypsilanti to be able to live in either place and be able to afford it. So when you're thinking too, when you're talking about the aspect of how do the rest of us, see some benefit from this, it cannot be if it done in a way that just benefits the few, that just benefits the landlords, that just benefits those. Because some people use gentrification as a positive word. They say gentrification is economic development, is whatever you want to call it. But if that is happening with the benefit of the few, and oftentimes many of the people that own homes in Ypsi that are renting them out live in Ann Arbor, live outside of town anyways. So a lot of that wealth, a lot of those dollars aren't even staying in the community. And so when you start looking at that, you have to have economic growth and progress that is owned by those that are, like you said, I love that you used the word indigenous, because it is people that are from the community. And by the way, this is not just a trend in Ypsilanti. You see it happening in Detroit. You see it happening in Inkster. You see it happening in Benton Harbor, Flint. Frankly, Black communities all across the state of Michigan. And just to tie it to state politics for a second, this doesn't have as much to do with Ypsilanti in the moment. But if you look at what happened with the emergency manager law in the state of Michigan between 2010 and 2015, and the way that communities were robbed of their democratic power, and individuals were appointed to make decisions for the communities, and many of those decisions involved selling off community assets that were wealth that was built by those communities, and then to sell those assets off at cents on the dollar to predominantly white investors to make a profit. That is robbery. That is colonialism, imperialism, however you want to call it. It's in the same way that they came to Algeria to mine natural gas, or went to Nigeria to extract oil or diamonds. It's the same playbook done in the modern context. So what do we do about it? I think is multifaceted. But and you mentioned earlier, one of the things that's happening to me politically is obviously I'm term limited in the state house. So as a state representative, one of the things that I've prided myself in doing is acknowledging that my community in Ann Arbor is fairly well off, and just knowing that, Ann Arbor, we have our problems, but primarily our problem is that we've gentrified, and that we need to reverse that trend of gentrification in order to help solve some of these problems. But as I even look at that, I say, okay, that aside, what is my role going to be? And so I have found that being in the role of an ally and a soldier to the communities, to my fellow colleagues that represent places like Flint and Detroit, we are working together as a group in unison to fight for the issues that are happening in those communities. And I feel that I can leverage the resources of my community to help support that, and to try to channel the energy of my constituents to help them understand that what we have in Ann Arbor, we have partially based on this basis of colonialism, exploitation, and gentrification. And that we have, if we are going to be able to live with that, we have to then roll up our sleeves and try to repair some of the damage that we've done, and to try to rebuild and help to extend not just a helping hand, but a hand of allyship, not one that takes control or takes charge, but one that says, what can I do to help you? How can I roll up my sleeves and be a soldier in your fight? And that is not to say, again, be a soldier in the fight of the gentrification of these communities. It's to say, how do we build wealth in those that have set down their roots in these communities, so that their roots can be stronger and can't be uprooted. And oftentimes so that's what I've done in my role as a state representative. And before that, when I was a county commissioner, I saw that role, but on a smaller scale, just with Washtenaw County. And I hope, because now I'm running for county commissioner again, I hope to be doing that once again, to say, okay, I've got this district that's a little chunk of Ann Arbor, but my goal is not to enrich my community anymore. My goal is to say, how do I leverage the resources of my community to help support, Ypsilanti Township, Superior Township, the east side of Washtenaw County, to make sure that we're all, that we're all thriving together in a way that ensures popular wealth, not wealth for a few, but popular wealth.
Right. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Wow. Gail Summerhill said that I should invite you to the show, and we got the right one on the show. Hey, trust me, because there's so many. I was using the analogy and the etymology of the word democracy, power to the people. And like I said, I'm not going to say it appears, but so many of our elected officials are working for the capitalists,
right?
The developers,
right?
And they're working for their best interests and not thinking for the people. And I understand politics. You get what I mean?
Right.
Palms are being greased and what have you,
right.
and they go. I say they go to the all-you-can-eat seafood and crab and steak dinner, and that's where the backdoor deals are made. And so many of our elected officials in this community, in eastern side of the county, if you will, have completely sold out their constituency because they're doing what they think is better for the area, if you will. I have this saying that says, I've heard it said that a rising tide raises all boats. But what if your boat has a hole in it?
Right.
So what appears that you're doing good for the greater good is actually bringing harm to those who have a hole in their boat.
Right.
And that's what I like about the ARPA funding that President Joe Biden had brought down. But he specifically, and he said, and he recently said it last week when he was dealing with the issue of ghost guns. He said, get that money into the hands of the people who know best what's going on the ground, so that they can better that community.
Right.
I had an issue, and I still take issue with it. Maybe I don't understand all the dynamics behind it, but a lot of that money from the ARPA fund was taken into broadband on the western side of the county. Well, I've told people that here in Ypsilanti, for people who don't have the internet, you know where they go? They go to the public library and they utilize it.
Right.
And so if they wanted to use the internet, then you can go to your public library. Also, there's still regular VHF and UHF television being transmitted via the signal. You just have to have a digital antenna. So you can still pick up and see what's going on. It's not necessary. The point I'm getting at, the money needs to be into the hands of the people who really need it the most. People who need help the most should get the most help.
Right.
I was listening to as you were talking, and you were talking about Algeria getting its freedom. And I recall some of the Black Panther members of the Black Panther Party actually went to Algeria, and that is where they got their asylum, if you will.
Yes, sir.
In particular, Eldridge Cleaver.
Yep.
And he was welcomed by Algeria. So I'm looking at the correlation between those and what have you and stuff.
Well, and again, and you're asking me, where do I get my roots from? Right? I think back about that history, and it's like, okay, we achieved our freedom, and then what did we do? We turned around and we said, not only are we going to welcome the Black Panthers, but we welcomed resistance fighters from all across Africa and from nations that had not achieved their independence yet. And we said, we will provide you a home base to train, to create stable footing and be able to then, go back and achieve your independence too. So it's not just, it's the acknowledgement that, we are all interconnected.
Yes, exactly. That's my point. Connected. Yeah, and like I said, and that's what a democracy is about with people and what have you. You said something earlier. I'm a City of Ypsilanti Sustainability Commissioner, and you said you were dealing with environmental issues.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
And so one thing we do know, whatever a person chooses to call it, whether they call it global warming, climate change, or whatever, I'm not going to debate that.
Right.
But those of us who are involved with it, we do know that our environment is changing. You can actually see it. But what we do have is a climate crisis. And what I find what's drawing a lot of people here to Michigan in particular is, if you look at the map as the seasons change and the climates change, is that this is one of the safest places to be.
Yeah.
And in particular, what will make it that more inviting is we have fresh water. Yeah. And so do you find, as being environmentalists, that is what's drawing people to our state and to our community, because we already have the infrastructures in place, and that is what's drawing people to our community.
Yes, absolutely. So, and I love that you brought this up because it ties to so many of the issues we were just talking about. But yes, I mean, the from a science background, Michigan, it has the fewest of any state natural disasters in a given year.
Yes.
And so people look at that and they're like, well, back where I live, we have wildfires, tornadoes, all this stuff. So yeah, I'm going to move to Michigan where, yeah, you have to deal with the snow and that, but in terms of natural disasters, there's less. And to your point, all this fresh water. But then you start to layer on and think about, we have all this fresh water, but fresh water for who? Who has access to the fresh water? Because if you live in Flint, you don't have access.
You don't have access.
Right. You're not. So it's not universally accessible to everybody. So you ask yourself, okay, people that are moving here, in some ways it's a good thing, right? Because it creates economic opportunities. Again, some of the same things we're talking about. But then where are these new residents moving to? And is that resulting in an improvement for those of us that have been here and those that are, for example, living in Flint or Benton Harbor or Hamtramck and seeing these conditions, is that going to result in change for them? Or is it just going to accelerate the opportunities for those that are moving? Like, I know, we see that the housing market right now is through the roof because everybody's trying to move to Michigan, and it's increasing property values, which again is getting back to the issue that you were talking about around rent, not just rental prices, but the other issue we haven't talked about too is it's not just about rental prices, it's about land ownership. How do we create opportunities for people to own homes and property, because that's how you build, generational wealth is through that. And so, but if all these folks are moving here and the property values are going way up, we've boxed a lot of people out from those opportunities. So we've got to think about all those things and all of that. There's a lot of evolution that's happened in how people have thought about sustainability. It's not just about the environment and what's happening to the earth and what's happening to the weather and the climate. It's about what's happening to the people, in that context. And so, and the last thing I'll say too is the other framing on climate change that I want to put out there is it is, global warming, climate change, but to me, it is also a wealth crisis.
Yes.
A wealth crisis. Because when you look at the individuals that are contributing the most to climate change, it is the super wealthy. It is the super wealthy. If you look at Jeff Bezos, right? He's got this mega yacht. What do you think a mega yacht uses to get around? He's going up in space. Elon Musk is going up in space. That's burning rocket fuel, and these people are living a lifestyle where one man is using what an entire village could use in a lifetime. And resources, and those are resources that that are then going into the atmosphere that are causing a worsening climate condition, and then of course those that are going to bear the disproportionate brunt of those impacts are the people probably in that village that could have survived for that lifetime on what Elon Musk spent on one rocket trip. And so when you see rising tides, I guess in the negative sense this time, right? Rising oceans, who's going to be impacted in those coastal communities? It's not the wealthy. It's going to be those that live, in impoverished conditions that can't move anymore. And so all of these issues, tie back to economic issues and tie back to, looking at sustainability in the lens of how is it impacting humanity? How is it impacting poverty? How is it impacting communities, across the globe?
Yes, thank you for saying that. I read somewhere, I can't remember who said it. They said that politics is warfare without the bloodshed, and warfare is politics with bloodshed. So how we succinctly broke down is that whether we're talking about slavery, imperialism, or gentrification, we're talking the same thing. Right. One of the things that the late mayor of Detroit, Coleman Young, said before he died and we got out, and he said this, he says, don't give up the jewels.
Right.
And you were talking about that
Yes.
selling up. He
Yes.
said, don't give off the jewels. Two things what he spoke about directly was Belle Isle, and he said the water treatment plant. And just as soon as he passed away and what have you, the very first thing they did was started regionalize, I believe was the term, the water treatment plant in Detroit. And they took control of that. And that directly had an effect on why Flint made the decision that they did. But it was a conscious decision that what they were doing. You know, they knew what they were going on. And understand that governments function on 30, 20, 10, and 5-year, 2-year plans. We knew this was happening when Coleman Young transitioned. This is what he said was going to happen. He called it, and this is where we're at right now. So there's a question that Gail Summerhill put in here. And she says, because you said you're running for the Washtenaw County Board of Commissioners. If I recall, there's an 8th and 9th district in the city of Ann Arbor. Is that correct?
Yes. 7th, 8th, and 9th district. 7th, 8th, and 9th. Ann Arbor, out of a 9-member board.
Out of a 9-member board. So which district would you be running for?
So mine is the 8th district.
And that would be, what area would that?
So it's essentially all of downtown Ann Arbor.
Downtown Ann Arbor.
And the south side.
Okay. That's where the money's at. Well, the money's over in, that's a lot of infrastructure.
A good chunk of wealth in that district for sure. But that gets back to what I was saying earlier. I mean, I would be representing the heart of what has been gentrified. And so for me, it's, that is part of my mission, right? Is to first of all, name it, but second of all, how do we undo that gentrification? How do we create opportunities for wealth and opportunities for those that have been displaced to come back if they want to, and be able to not just, like I said, not just not necessarily just rent, but maybe even own property again too. And I think that is one of the lenses that we have to look at this through, is how do we repair the damage that's been done. But again, it starts with an acknowledgement and let a lot of people aren't necessarily willing to make.
Ear to the Ground 197 is brought to you by Tracy Sweet Touch Production. Tracy's Sweet Touch Productions uniquely creating gifts for any occasion. You can find her on YouTube, Passionately Intrigued Arts, Instagram at Tracy Sweet Touch Production, TikTok at Estella Fabulous, Pinterest, Miss Tracy E. Davis. You can email her at dallasdodakota@gmail.com. And then finally, you can find her on Facebook at Tracy E. Davis. And I was so intrigued with our state representatives' conversations. I forgot to tell everybody to hit like, enter into the comment Y1, and share. Why do I ask people to put Y1? Because I believe in Ypsilanti first.
Nice.
Exactly. So we ask you to share, like, and type into the comment Y1 Ypsilanti first. And the reason why I asked them to do that is because the programming that I use doesn't allow me to share until it's after we're done. So I'm trying to stimulate the algorithm. Tracy Sweet Touch Productions, like I said, one of our sponsors, along with Blackstone Bookstore and Cultural Center, located in downtown Ypsilanti, owned by my good friend Carlos Franklin and his lovely wife, Andrea, as well as Kip and Athena Johnson. That's Blackstone Bookstore and Cultural Center, located in beautiful downtown city of Ypsilanti, located right across the street from the public library. When you come on Ypsi Can I Share, state representative, you get gifts.
Oh,
so I got something in this box for you.
Awesome.
And we're gonna get it at the end.
Okay,
we're gonna get it again. So the question that was asked before I did that, Gail Summerhill asked, if elected to the Washtenaw County Board of Commissioners, what plans do you have a plan, or what plans do you have? And I forget what she said, and I'm paraphrasing, to better all of the community and uplift. And you kind of described that, how you're working on, but do you have a already plan laid out, what have you, if you will?
Well, so it's pretty multifaceted in terms of how, in terms of the detail of what I'm hoping to accomplish. There's a lot of different areas, of course, that the county covers, and so there's a lot of areas that we can do work in. But I think you get a sense now of how I'm going to approach from a broad perspective these things. In terms of the detail of it, there's a few aspects. The first is one of the major issues in Washtenaw County wide is around mental health and mental health care.
Mhm.
And that's something that obviously we have had struggles with
Yes.
in our community in terms of how we fund it, how we prioritize it, how we make sure that the right people are getting the service that they need. And that's an issue that I'm very passionate about, and making sure that we get that. And so, and what we don't want to do is continue down the trend of sort of it being sort of a top-down organization, to your point earlier,
Right.
and try to make sure that we are going to the community and making sure that the community it's called community mental health.
Right.
That's what
for a reason. Right.
Right. It's called community mental
Right.
health. So how do we make sure that the community is in charge of that programming and directs that programming in the way that the community at large sees fit? So mental health care is one area. The other area around, when we're talking again about the piece about gentrification and wealth creation and stuff like that, affordable housing in Ann Arbor is one of my big issues. Affordable housing in Ypsilanti, and making sure that we are creating those opportunities. There's a lot of folks that I think look at development with the lens of, well, let's just build anything, anywhere, anytime.
Yeah.
And my approach it's not going to necessarily help if we're building luxury condominiums and luxury houses, $1 million homes. That's, to me, furthering the process of gentrification, not rolling it back.
Yes.
So how do we build opportunities for folks? The second piece of that is the county has a long history of having a weatherization program, and I want to try to leverage that program and amplify it, because I believe that is one of the single best ways that we can help. Is because what that program does essentially is, when you're facing financial hardship, with a property that you own or with a rental property, and you're facing the decision of, do I have to sell this house and get out of this house, or do I fix my furnace or hot water heater or whatever? That's where the county can come in and say, hey, we're going to come in and we're going to replace your hot water heater for you, so that you can stay in your house, so that you can continue to build that wealth. And so we're not putting you out, basically. And so amplifying that, so that we're creating these, and some of it too, it fits right into the environmental aspect of it, that sustainability piece, to say, okay, maybe it's the windows, maybe we can redo all the windows in the house. And then that creates long-term opportunities for people to save money on their utility bills, right? So those are two.
When you say amplify, I hate to interrupt, we say amplify. And the reason why I get what you're saying, because that program only benefits homeowners and those who fit in a certain financial category, right? So amplifying it would do what?
To me, it's about making sure that the program applies to more people.
Okay, all right.
And making sure that because oftentimes we don't think about renters in that same context.
Right.
And we think that renters, like, okay, you don't own the house, and so why would we give money to your landlord to do these things? Well, the problem is that a lot of renters are in a situation where they're paying their electricity bill or they're paying their gas bill. And so if their bill is through the roof because their windows aren't good and their landlord has no incentive to change it, that's a problem that we have to try to fix. So that's one piece of it. The second piece of it is, I think the program should apply to a broader group of people just in general. And the only way to do that is through, additional resources. Right now, it's primarily funded using federal and state dollars. And I think that there's opportunities, having been at the state level now, right? So now I've been able to see kind of the full breadth of what the state does. I think there's opportunities for us to draw down even more dollars to help support those types of programs. So that's a big thing for me in that area. And the last thing I'll mention too is, of course, around healthcare in the county. And I do, maybe I'm a little, it'll take a little while to do this, but I think that we need to expand health programming and the physical health programming. Of course, we talked about mental health, but the physical health aspect of it. There's obviously work on dental care that's being done now. I would like to take an opportunity to look at that dental health program that we opened that clinic just down the street from here, actually, to provide.
Hope
dental-
Clinic, you're talking about Hope?
No, it's in the basement of the Trinity Health Building on
Huron Street.
Huron Street. Yeah.
Okay, right. Mhm.
So there's that dental program there. That was something that I worked on when I was a commissioner to make sure that we had 11 chairs of dental care provided on the east
There's
side.
11 chairs there?
It's 11 chairs.
See, I'm glad you're sharing that information because me being ear to the ground,
Yeah.
I didn't even know that they had a dental in the basement and let alone now you're telling me 11 chairs are down there.
I fought for that 11 chairs.
And I'm wondering why, how come I don't know this immediately?
So that's exactly why when I come back to the county, that's one of the things I want to work on, because the last time, basically when I was chair of the board, when I was county commissioner, this is something we did. This was one of my initiatives, was building that dental clinic. And I insisted that it be in Ypsilanti on the east side. And I insisted that it be 11 chairs. They were going to do less than that. I think they were looking at 6. And I said, well, we have the budget to do 11. Let's do 11. So we went and I won that. And so they put 11 chairs in. And at first I thought, it was going pretty well. They were getting the word out, but that was right around the time that I then transitioned to the state house. Right. And so now I want to come back and take another look at that dental clinic and say, is it working for the community? Are we listening to community voices around it? Do people even know that it exists?
Like I said, I didn't even know. And I'm gonna say it now, I'm not. But Gail asked the question, who gets this information? Tracy Davis, she says, right, I have no idea about the dental clinic.
Yep.
And Gail said, who gets this information?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? This is right. It's right over. I can throw a rock and hit the building.
Yeah.
We're sitting right here.
It's right there. And we built it. The whole idea behind it was because when Obamacare was coming into effect, the Medicaid expansion occurred and more people became covered by Medicaid. But the problem with Medicaid is that, of course, it does not cover dental care to the same degree that private insurance does. You technically get dental care, but if you walk into a private dentist's office with Medicaid, they're going to tell you, sorry, we can't help you.
Right.
Because it reimburses at less than half of what private insurance does. And so most dentists just don't serve those that are on Medicaid. And so the idea behind this clinic is it of course takes, I think, any type of insurance you have, but it's primarily focused on that gap for individuals that are on Medicaid that don't have access to a private dental clinic that can come to this clinic and receive care as Medicaid recipients. And it also serves the uninsured and undocumented people that don't have insurance, whether they're citizens and uninsured or they're undocumented and uninsured. So it does cover the whole gamut. So again, like I said, one of my missions is to come back and try to make sure that this program, is there's new life breathed into it. In terms of who has this information, it should be the public health department. I mean, they're ostensibly, the ones running it. And we, the county, the taxpayers of Washington County invested to make that happen. So it's our program. And so that's definitely a priority of mine. And so my thing is, though, I want to see not just the community using that resource, but then, expanding on that so that we are providing, because Medicaid and those that are on Medicaid or those that are uninsured, there's so many gaps in coverage. It's incredible.
Right, exactly.
And there's so few that even when you look at vision care or hearing care, stuff like that, there's so few resources that serve those individuals that, if I come back and look at this dental clinic program that I started so many years ago and realize that, that there are things we can do to change it, make it better, then we do that. And once we do that, we say, okay, how do we create this model and replicate it for other types of services too?
Yeah. Tracy Davis says, thank you for letting us be aware. And I thank you that because I didn't know these things we didn't know. So also, Ear to the Ground 197 is in partnership with IFC Can I Share. It's an organization that I'm a founding member of and comes to name. And then what we did, Yusef, we created these, we call these empowerment cards. And what those are is they represent the 4 governing bodies of what we call Ypsilanti, Ypsilanti Township, Pittsfield Township, Superior Township, and the city of Ypsilanti. And those empowerment cards, what they do is they let the constituents, the citizens, residents, voters know who the elected officials are in this area. And what we did was we created this board right here, which is awesome. Which is a little bit larger. I'm just gonna hold this up right here. Is IFC Can I Share the voter empowerment cards? Have you tried to gain help with DHS and HHS? What we're just talking about, crime, violence, health care, what we're just talking about, utilities, affordable housing, everything what you're talking about is on there. It says, but you get nowhere. What can you do? It says you can call your elected officials. Helping you is their job. That's your job to help us. And this is also brought to us by the League of Women Voters of Washtenaw County. And we're in partnership with IFC Can I Share with Ear to the Ground 197 so that we can get this information out.
Yes,
okay?
and I'm glad that they put on there that, you know, that we are here to help, because I will tell you that, yes, we work on policy and all these things we're talking about big picture, but the day-to-day, most of what my office does is we take calls from people that are saying, hey, I got cut off Medicaid. Can you help me get back on? I got, you know, I can't get unemployment. That was a huge issue for the last 2 years during the pandemic, people that were trying to get their unemployment. That was all we did basically, was help people to work with the bureaucracy in Lansing to get, you know, paid what they were owed, and to make sure that they were on these, you know, support programs, including food assistance. That's another big one that we get a lot of feedback on. So,
yeah. You know, I want to thank you for being accessible. I try to adhere to a policy and a philosophy or ideology or whatever you want to call it. As I shared with you when you came in here, this is not the call you out bashy show. This is the information show. But I'm glad that you're accessible and you took the call. I have calls out right now. They haven't even returned. I mean, no kidding. But I can call officials around here, and not only do I have their cell phones, all that. When I call them, they answer the phone. And you know, and I'm not going to put no names out there. You get what I mean? Because it would, you know, say, well, who isn't answering the phone, right?
Yes.
But I call these people up, and Gail obviously called you up directly, and you answer the phone. I call some other people up, they answer the phone. I have calls out right now to some of our officials. They still haven't returned a phone call in 3 or 4 months now. Some people I've called just recently and return a call. I get the answer machine, voicemail, whatever. This is who it is. This is what I am. This is what I need. I didn't get information. IFC Can I Share League of Women Voters, Ear to the Ground 197 is responsible, or our mission is to get information out in particular, and to support those candidates who are doing things that are viable and uplifting to the community. Obviously, you're located in the city of Ann Arbor, and I can't vote for you, right? But you being on a board, county commissioner board, as a vote that can vote for policies, programs that will better my community. Beta Hesterly says me too, and they still haven't answered. She got anger. That's real talk. You know what I mean? I'm just serious. I'm just don't want to put nobody on blast.
Yeah,
but
I can't comment too much on it either, but I see what you're saying. I hear that. Yeah.
So how does my particular program get information out to make sure that you win the election, but you don't win just by the skin of your, you know, your teeth, the one vote, right? So how do we get the information out, and how can we assist you to get your message out and let people know what Yusef Rabi is about, what he plans to bring, who he isn't, and why the constituency of Ann Arbor should vote for Yusef Rabi? How can we do this? Okay.
Well, so I appreciate that question. Thank you. And so I'm going to answer that by starting off with sort of, again, my philosophy on how I approach service at the state level. Is my title is state representative. It's not Ann Arbor representative. It's not that. So I approach it as state representative. I'm voting on policy every day that impacts the entire state. People in Detroit, Flint, you know, up in the Upper Peninsula, down in Monroe County, what the work that I do impacts everybody, right? And so the same philosophy for me applied when I was a county commissioner back then, will apply as I'm a county commissioner, you know, if I win this election. It is that what the work that I do is not just for my constituents, it is for all 350,000 residents in Washtenaw County. And so to me, I see the answer to your question, you know, then if you flip that around to say, okay, I'm working to try to help everybody out. And so there is a role, I believe, that everybody in the county can play in helping good people get elected, not just saying myself, but I'm saying people all across, that are running for Washtenaw County Commissioner or other offices. There's a role that we can all play in that. Like we can't silo ourselves into our mindset, and we have to be working together on all these fronts. And so, I guess my ask, big picture, is, we all have networks and we all have communities that we work with. And, so my ask is, you may not, you may know somebody that lives in my district. You may know somebody that works in my district, that is a business owner, or that is an employee, or that worships in my district. And those are all connections that are important. And so if you see opportunities, and Gail has been fantastic with this with me, to say, hey, here's somebody that you need to talk to. Here's somebody that you need to sit down with. Here's somebody that, and to me, it doesn't matter if it's in Ann Arbor, or if it's in Ypsilanti, or if it's in Chelsea. I mean, I'm happy to sit down and have those conversations and to talk to anybody that I need to be accessible. And because it helps me to serve better as a county commissioner, as a state representative. And so that's what I would find valuable, from you and your listeners is when you see those opportunities, I'm here to sit down and take them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I'm going to respect your time and respect our viewers' time. Yeah. We try to do 1 hour.
Sure.
So before I present you with your gift here, there's one question that was asked, and I think you might have answered. And what does a state representative do? And then you can have the final words, whatever you like to say. And I think you already had the final words, but what is state representative? And I think you kind of said it, but just for the answer the question.
Yeah. So I mean, that is a great question. A lot of people don't know, but it's basically I'm one of 110 members of the State House of Representatives. There's 38 senators and the governor, and we play a vital role in the process of government, of course, because we help to initiate legislation. I can draft bills on just about anything that impacts state law, and bring those through the process. Get them voted on by the House, the Senate, and signed by the governor, and then they become law. But we deal with such a broad gamut of things that it can be difficult at times to be an expert in all areas, right? So we're dealing with the budget. It's a multi-billion-dollar budget that funds everything from schools to roads to mental health programming. It's the whole wide swath of things. But then when you look at regulatory changes in the state of Michigan, we deal with everything from the rules around when you stop at a red light, traffic rules, all the way to economic development bills, and all kinds of different things that we deal with. So every day is a new adventure. Every day is completely different in terms of what we're voting on the House floor. So that's a main aspect of what we do. And then, as I said, a big aspect in our offices is just helping constituents that call us that have issues, that are facing difficulty working with state bureaucracy and helping them to get through that process. So it's a kind of a multifaceted, job that we're engaged in. So, one of the areas that's been concerning to me, and this is a little bit, leading into my closing comments too, is, there has been a lot in my time in office, a big push to take tax dollars and give it to private sector businesses. There has been a big movement to exempt large corporations in Michigan from paying taxes. And every time that happens, and sometimes it's small things and sometimes it's big things. Like just recently, we gave out $1 billion, $1 billion. And that is a big number. That's a lot of money, $1 billion. We gave out $1 billion to GM. And this was not a tax credit. This was not like you don't have to pay $1 billion in taxes. We took money out of the state coffer, money that's supposed to be going to schools, universities, Eastern's funded. We took that money, $1 billion out, and we said, here you go. That is messed up. That is messed up.
Right.
And that is just the latest example, but it happens, it feels like every other week. We have a piece of legislation, maybe it's $50 million here, $20 million there, but it all adds up.
Yes.
And to your point about what Mayor Young said, don't give away the
Don't
jewels.
give away the
But to
jewels.
me, I see that as an everyday fight,
Mhm.
you know, and we have little, sometimes it doesn't feel like you're giving away a major asset because it's only 50 million, 20 million. That's a major asset to
Yes.
me.
Mhm.
That is hard-earned taxpayer dollars that we are giving away to a for-profit company. And that is money that's being taken away from fixing the roads. I mean, you've driven on the roads just today.
Mhm.
It is a disaster. It's
Yes,
a
it
nightmare.
is.
We have the resources, we have the wealth to fix our roads, to provide healthcare for everybody, to fund our schools and universities. We have the resources to
Yes.
do it. We just have this political environment where instead of doing it, we're handing out money to private corporations to line the pockets literally of CEOs
Yes.
and to make money for shareholders.
Mhm.
And so we need to, one of my missions in life as a state legislator, and will be as county commissioner too, is to push back against that and to protect that which is public, that which we hold in the common good,
Mhm.
whether it is a physical resource or whether it is a budgetary resource. Those dollars and those resources need to be deployed in a way that benefits the greatest number and those in need. That's how it should be deployed, not to benefit the elite few.
Yes.
And so, I guess that's my closing comment
Okay.
today, is to just say we can do better as a state, as a county, as a country. We need to, and that is, to me, that is the crisis of our moment.
Yeah, and that's what we have to do as a voting constituency. We have to hold our elected officials
Absolutely.
accountable and responsible. And if they're not doing the will of the people's democracy, because it is, as I said before, power to the people,
Mhm.
which is democracy, then maybe you shouldn't be representing us.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And that's why, like I said, I know I've seen people change once they get elected and they start to eating at the all-you-can-eat seafood dinner and get the steak dinners and get the little what I'm gonna say per diems and stuff, and they forget all about us, and it's a terrible thing, and I see it and I witness it on firsthand level.
Yes.
But that's a different thing. I'm gonna ask you if you would check your calendar in the near future, and I say that because there's a lot of questions in the comment box that the viewers asking. They're very good questions. And I'm not going to disrespect anybody's time, in particular yours, and holding you over. But I would like to have you come back.
I would love that. I would
Yeah.
love that. I was actually just going to say, because we
Okay.
started going down
Yeah,
that
the
road
route,
of like,
yeah.
Campaign finance and all this
Right.
stuff. And I'm like, wow, there's a lot to talk
There's a
about
lot
here.
to talk about.
So
right?
I would love to come back
Yes.
and break some of that down
Okay.
with you.
So take a look at your calendar and email me, text me, or whatever, so we
Yes.
can have you back.
We'll
okay?
exchange numbers.
We exchange numbers, okay? We don't have right now. But anyway, Ear to the Ground 197 is brought to you by Tracy Sweet Touch Productions, and she made that gift exclusively for
Oh, wow.
for you. And sharing that right there, what she got there for you.
Oh my gosh, look at this thing. Oh my gosh, this is cool. Wow, look at that.
Yeah.
So it's, State of Michigan in maize and blue, which I like,
Right,
of
okay.
course.
Mhm.
State Representative Yusuf and you. So this is Yusuf and you. I'm so
Okay, what
glad.
is
This
that?
is
See,
perfect.
I didn't know about
Hey,
that. When I seen
hey.
Tracy, she told me what's you says from you.
Hey, this is perfect, actually,
Okay.
because that reminds me now that I
Okay.
get to say this. Everything
Okay.
works out for a reason.
Mhm.
And Gail would say that too. But Yusuf and you. So this is what I call my constituent hours.
Okay.
Like you talked about accessibility before. I take pride in how accessible I am. And so my Yusuf and you constituent hours, I do them twice a month, every month. We've been doing them on Zoom, but we used to do them in person, and we're going to do over the summer in person, some of them as well. And these are opportunities for folks, and anybody can join, by the way.
Mhm.
We welcome anybody from any district, anybody can log in. These are opportunities for folks to come and hear from me about what's happening in Lansing. I give a breakdown of these are the bills that came up, these are the bills that are coming up next week, these are the things that we're trying to wrestle through, and then I open it up for questions, and it's free form. Anybody can ask whatever they want, and I do the best job I can to answer it or to get the information that people need later on. And so these happen every second Monday of every month at 6 p.m. on Zoom.
Mhm.
And every fourth Saturday of every month at 10 a.m. also on Zoom. But like I said, we're going to start doing some in person. So if anybody wants to join our email list, they can, probably the best way is to just email our office, which is my name, yousefrabhi@house.mi.gov. And that's how you can basically, if you email us and you say, hey, I want to be added to your email list, we'll put you on there. We'll send you updates on the things, when we have these Yusuf and you constituent hours. And like I said, we welcome anybody, we welcome any questions. And it is actually a great conversation. We usually get pretty good attendance.
Okay.
So this is awesome. Thank you.
All right. That's brought to you by Tracy Sweet Touch Productions, uniquely created gifts for any occasion. You can find Tracy on YouTube at Passionately Intrigued Arts, Instagram at Tracy Sweet Touch Production, TikTok at Estella Fabulous, Pinterest, Miss Tracy E. Davis, email her at dallas2dakota@gmail.com, and then finally Facebook, Tracy E. Davis. Also, Ear to the Ground 197 is brought to you by Ipsy Can I Share, as well as the League of Women Voters, and of course, Blackstone Bookstore and Cultural Center located in downtown Ypsilanti, right across the street from the public library, owned by my good friend Carlos and Kip Johnson and their lovely wife, respectively, Andrea and Athena. That's Blackstone Bookstore and Cultural Center.
I gotta check that out.
Yeah, check them out right over there.
Yeah, check it out.
Tell Carlos I sent you.
I will.
Seriously, tell Carlos I sent you. Take care of you. And next week on Ear to the Ground 197, we're going to have Carl Barr, attorney Carl Barr, and he's running for a judge. I want to say it's going to be City of Ypsilanti area district court. He told me what it was. He contacted me, and that's attorney Carl Barr. And then next week we're going to have Ypsilanti Township trustee Jimmy E. Wilson back again, Jimmy Wilson Jr., and he's going to be clearing up a little thing about that marijuana issue. There was a lot of talk about smoking weed and So he's going to come in here and sit down at the table and clear up a little information on you. So Ear to the Ground is brought to you by, once again, Tracy Sweet Touch Productions, slow down, Bryan, and Ear to the Ground 197, League of Women Voters, and Ipsy Can I Share. You can find us here on Facebook Live at 11 o'clock on Saturday mornings. And for those of you who have friends that say, I'm not into that Facebook thing, you can find me on Ear to the Ground 197 YouTube Live. And with that, we're going to be out of here to this time next week. And as my theme says, all power to the people. It's right there. Yeah, 3 seconds.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
I thought that was awesome.